Hey there, I'm Brandon. This is the Dirt Church Devotional. I want to ask you a couple questions. One, can you trust God with your kids? The second question is similar to it, and that is this: will you trust God with your kids? Now, if you're watching and you don't have kids, or your kids are grown, or keep watching, it'll be relevant for you too. But I want to talk to those particularly with parents first and foremost, with kids first and foremost. It's really tough these days, especially as a Christian parent, to see how the world is going. I mean, lots of crazy ideas out there, lots of crazy things that are non-biblical and non-Christian, and it's frustrating for many parents to think about sending their kids to a public school or sending their kids into areas where they're surrounded with things that mom and dad don't agree with, where mom and dad's faith doesn't line up with it, and there's a lot of concern there. And that's good. It's good to have those concerns, but before you get too concerned about it, before we start pulling our hair out too much, considering those questions, can you trust God with your kids, and will you trust God with your kids? I encourage you to go to the book of Exodus. Exodus chapter 1 tells us the story of history, kind of brings us up to speed on the history of Israel in Egypt after Joseph's death, where they had become slaves. They were there for 430 years as slaves. Chapter 2, the first part of chapter 2, talks about the birth of a guy by the name of Moses. Now, when Moses was born, the law of the land was that every Hebrew boy that was born had to be killed, had to be thrown into the Nile. Now, when he was born, his parents said, not going to do it. They feared God more than they feared Pharaoh, more than they feared the law. And so they kept him at home for about 3 months and nursed him and took care of him. But when he got too big to take care of at home, it says that his mom took a papyrus basket, and covered it with pitch inside and out and laid him in it. And get this, put him in the Nile River. Now, the Nile's got crocodiles, it's got all sorts of stuff. She put him in the Nile River and let him go. Now, you think you've trusted God with your kid. Have you ever thought about just putting him in a basket and letting him go down a dangerous river? She let him go down. Now, if you've heard the story, you've read the story, you find out that a little ways downstream, Pharaoh's daughter was taking a bath. She found him. She said, this is one of the Hebrew babies. She had compassion on him. She ended up taking him into her house and raising him as her own. Now, his older sister talked to her, and beautiful thing about it, his birth mom was able to nurse him until she weaned him, and then she gave him. But here's the deal. She had to give her son to Pharaoh's daughter to be raised by her. She wasn't simply sending him to her exes for the weekend and having to deal with the repercussions when he got home. She wasn't simply sending him to public school 5 days a week or 9 months out of the year and having to deal with what he was bringing home from school. She sent her baby boy to live in Pharaoh's palace, to be raised by Pharaoh's daughter. Get this, understand this. That was a very dark place. As much as Egypt was the world superpower, they were the leaders in economy and military and so on and so forth, spiritually it was very dark. She was sending her son into that place to be raised by them, and he would have to participate in everything just as if he was an Egyptian. He was involved in those pagan ceremonies, the demonic worship that they were involved in. He had to be involved in. Oh yeah, he learned all the military, he learned all the finance, he learned all the engineering and everything that they had. But he also was inundated with the spiritual. We go, oh my goodness, how can that be? How can this turn out good? Well, that little boy that his mom trusted into God's hands ended up being Moses, who at the age of 40 left. Now, 40, not 4, not 14, 40 years old, left Egypt, decided not to be part of Pharaoh's household. 40. He had been involved in that stuff for 40 years. That is the same Moses who is like the number one guy in Judaism. That is the same Moses that the rest of the Bible talks about, that God used to bring Israel out of captivity. It's the same Moses that God appeared to on Sinai. It's the same Moses that got the Ten Commandments and the rest of the law. This is the same Moses that is so revered for his faith and his faithfulness. Now, if God can protect a little boy like that, a little baby like that, when his mom just trusts him to God, just releases him to God, just trusts God with her most precious thing, what can God do for you? How can God bless and protect your children? You might be afraid that they're going to pick up bad habits, and they might. But God's got a bigger plan. And if you will stand your ground, and if you will pray, and if you will commit and trust God with your kids, God can and will do great things in them, through them, for you. Now, I said if you don't have kids, you've already raised your kids, it's still pertinent to you. What is that thing that is so special to you, so powerful to you, it's so hard for you to release and trust to God? Maybe it's your marriage. Maybe it's your career. Maybe it's your future. It's your plans. I'm telling you, if you will trust God with it, not just cognitively, but just surrender those things to him, he can take care of them. He can bless them. He can protect them. It may be 6 months down the road. It may be a year. It may be, like in Moses' case, 40 years down the road. But God is faithful. Let me leave you with that. Chew on that for a while. Lord bless you. Have a great day. I'll talk to you next time. Trust him. Trust him.